This video is all about trying to find the right amount of grip between your foot and the pedal you use, both flat and clipless pedals. So flat pedals, I guess that's the easiest one to start with. Obviously you have a flat shoe, so a normal trainer or a mountain bike shoe, and you're trying to get that right amount of grip between that and your flat pedal. With these Crank Brothers stamps, actually come in two different sizes, so that is really down to your shoe size. 8 and above on UK sizes, you go for the larger size. Below that, you go for the smaller size, and that is quite important to get the sort of right amount of overlap, front and rear. After that, it's all about trying to dial these pins in, depending on your shoe. So some people go for the really soft, grippy soled shoes. Therefore, I think you actually really want to run these pins quite low and quite close to the pedal. If you start to pull them out too much and run them really high, you actually get so much grip that if you occasionally slide around on the pedal like you will do on a really rough track, it's then really difficult to readjust your pedals. So in that case, those really soft shoes will actually wind these pins quite low into the pedal. Okay, so to the clipless pedals, this does get slightly more complicated depending on the brand of pedal and shoe you have. Some have these pins much like the flat pedal. Again, you can sort of tweak in or out to get that feel on the bottom of your sole. Also, we have these traction pads on these Crank Brothers mallet downhills, so you can actually change the width of those. At the moment, I've got the stock ones in. You can actually slide those out as I have done already. You see that little plastic insert, so you can get thinner or thicker ones of those, and actually that's going to give you a bit of friction between the sole of your shoe and the pedal. If you don't have those, it's all about really tweaking the setup from your cleat. Obviously with clipless pedals, that spring retention system is designed to keep your foot stuck to that pedal for maximum pedaling power. So you don't particularly need to mess around with your sort of traction pads and your pins. However, personally, I like to actually feel that pedal through my shoe still, almost like a flat pedal. I think that really suits sort of downhill and more aggressive riders. The disadvantage of having these thicker traction pads and your pins wound out too much is we get too much friction, and that actually make it harder to clip out of that pedal. If you actually look closely on the bottom of my shoe here, you can see some black marks where those pins of the pedal dig in, and I get that nice feel. Like I said, I actually really like that, especially for cornering, to just be able to feel my pedal slightly rather than feel like I'm floating around above the pedal. Occasionally you might find with your shoe, depending on the brand, you might actually have to trim the outside of this sort of cleat area just so you don't get too much interference with the pedal. If this is too tight and actually touches the pedal when you're trying to clip in and out, you'll find it really difficult. So on this shoe I don't, but occasionally you will have to do that. So for different brands of pedal where you may not have that option of moving the pins in or out, it's all about trying to space that cleat in or out from the shoe to get that optimum amount of feel. So if you put too many space in there, you move that cleat away from the shoe, you might feel like you're actually sort of rattling around on top of that pedal. You're just using the mechanism rather than having any friction onto that pedal and shoe itself. That may suit cross countries where you have that sort of harder soled shoe rather than some rubber on the bottom. They tend to ride those carbon soled shoes. If you space it further in, you might just about start to get some feel. Again, if you go too far in, so you take all the spaces out, you're actually going to struggle probably to get in or out. You might get some interference between the sole of that shoe and your pedal. In my case here, I'm not running that plastic spacer beneath the cleat. The cleat goes straight to the bottom of the shoe, and then I'm just messing around with these traction pads and pins to get that right amount of feel. So there's a few tips on how to tweak your pedals, try and set them up perfectly for you. If you want to see more videos from JMBN, click on the logo to subscribe. We'd love it if you do that. Click up there for clips versus flats, and down there for a beginner's guide to riding with clipless pedals. Give us a thumbs up if you like this video.